And welcome to another edition of Decision 2022 here on our local talk program, Next Door Radio, nextdoorradio.com, and by way of the Next Door Radio app. Candidate for U.S. Congress, Courtney Geels, joins us here. Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are y'all?
We are fantastic. Trey Snide, Mike Snide here. Let's go into really your history, your background before we kind of dive deep into your campaign. Let's talk about your background a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm a Christian conservative nurse. I grew up in North Carolina in Hillsborough, which is Orange County, North Carolina. Oh my goodness. Sorry, guys.
You're
bad start. But I'm a real person, so now you can feel like
I know, right?
But I grew up in North Carolina. I now live in Durham, but I got my nursing degree from Bob Jones University in South Carolina, Christian college. I went to public school my whole life, but then I went to a very strict Christian college for university. And I got my nursing degree, became an emergency room nurse. I worked a little bit of clinic before I did that, but I've done mostly ER in my career, about 9 or 10 years now. And I ended up as a travel nurse. And so I travel nurse all over North Carolina mostly, but I actually went to Seattle where I met my husband. And we got married in 2020 and we now live in Durham. So that's kind of my background of like who I am, where I've come from, but why run for office. My husband is a CPA, specializes in data analytics, and kind of a long story that led up to it, but he ended up being the lead data expert on the Trump versus Raffensperger case in Georgia.
Oh, wow.
So we were really seeing, the truth when it came to Georgia and the data and what the difference between what he was seeing and what the public was seeing in the media, and that coming from Democrats and Republicans. And so between him working on that and me working in the hospital with COVID and seeing how politicized COVID was, and then the way the vaccine was rolled out and really the manipulation of the public, the mandates came out and both of my parents were put in a situation where they would lose their jobs and their respiratory therapists. And so they were told, if you don't take it, you're going to lose your job. And that was the point in which really this federal government overreach was touching my family, and I couldn't stand for it anymore. So here I am running for U.S. Congress.
Wow, that's exciting. Well, again, this is Courtney Geels running for the 4th Congressional District, candidate for Congress. Courtney is joining us today on Decision 2022. And can you explain a little bit about the 4th Congressional District? Well, I'm not sure that our listeners completely understand what that is. And maybe you can give an idea of kind of how that's drawn and go from there.
Yeah, it's been pretty confusing in North Carolina because it's changed multiple times now, but currently, and I think finally, the District 4 is Granville County, Orange and Durham County, and then Person and Alamance County. So we've got 5, and then just a little sliver of Caswell, but it's very small. So pretty much five counties, and the incumbents it's mostly David Price's district, who's retiring. I think Butterfield had a little bit of Granville County, but he's also retiring. So I am here to flip the seat red.
Wow, that's exciting stuff. Well, what you said you're a nurse, obviously an RN. What do you like most about being in the medical field?
Well, I love that question because that's kind of like how I lead into things in general when I can only tell people 2 minutes about myself is as a nurse, you're the patient advocate. And that's really my favorite aspect of nursing is getting to know a patient, and whether that's their physical needs, their emotional needs, their mental, their financial, sometimes as a stress, and really getting to know them and what they need. And then, fighting for what that is. And usually that ends up being a medical thing, whether that's having to push a doctor to order something or a test or explain to a patient what's really going on, but really advocating for what they need. And that's something that I've really seen in the hospital as a challenge, because hospital administrations in the past couple of years have had a big trend toward prioritizing profits over quality patient care. And my husband has also noticed that. He was at a large CPA firm, and he was noticing a lot of the similarities. The bigger the firm got, the worse the product got that he was giving his clients, but the more they were paying for it. And that's what I've been noticing in the hospital system, is we are seeing a lot of small hospitals get acquired by larger systems, and the quality of healthcare is going down. And so it's been an interesting mirror to watching what's going on in our government, and just seeing the larger an organization, it seems like the worse the quality of life or the quality of the care or the quality of the product is for the person that's in that product.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk a little bit about what kind of separates you from the other candidates. It's kind of an odd year this year with I know we're coming out of COVID, a lot of action going on now. People are getting together, in-person events, that kind of thing are going on now. So I don't know if you've been around some. We actually covered a Republican sheriff debate recently in Granville County, and very interesting, big time turnout crowd. It was kind of we couldn't believe it. Actually, I was surprised that many people came out on a Friday night to hear about a sheriff candidate. But I mean, it's so people are interested this year, and it's a little different year. Republicans are a little bit fired up because what's kind of going on and with the current administration in Washington. So it's going to be a big year for politics. So having said that, people are paying more attention now than ever before. So what kind of separates you from the rest of the field that's running for Congress?
Yeah, I wish I had gotten to see that debate. I've heard a lot of what's going on in Granville County with the sheriff. So that sounds really interesting. And I do have one primary opponent. His name's Robert Thomas. So people have to do their research and decide, who they identify with the best. But I would say I kind of like to market myself as just like a normal person that can empathize with the needs of others. I've worked a real job. I've grown up in a regular, I would say a regular lifestyle. And a lot of the people that have backgrounds in politics and who are what we call career politicians now, those are the people that have been really separated from the real needs of real people. And so I think being a nurse, what's been awesome about that career is that it's been a people job. And so I've always loved people. That's like, most people, they say it's really challenging, the idea of campaigning and talking to people all the time. That's my favorite part. And I think as a nurse, getting to know patients quickly. I joke that, a patient walks in and I have to tell them to like take all their clothes off and immediately them have to be comfortable with me being in the room with that. And so I think just having to get somebody to get to know me just on a regular level is something that is, something I'm really good at and I enjoy. And I enjoy getting to know people and their needs and hopefully helping those. So people just have to read me and decide if they believe that, but that's what I stand on.
Again, Courtney Geels joins us here on our Decision 2022 here, part of our local talk program and Next Door Radio. Let's kind of go into the issues a little bit more that you kind of see in the government wise. And basically what it means is your platform aspect of it. But what are a few things and issues that you would like to kind of get out there?
Well, I built my platform on the ideas of truth, justice, and unity in America. And I know those are words that have been used over and over again. And a lot of people are frustrated by those words, but they're biblical terms. And I think, when you talk about truth, the idea of truth has been really manipulated and watered down. There is ultimate truth, like Jesus is truth. And that's my worldview. And so when we talk about, this disinformation campaign or Black Lives Matter, keeping people safe, I really can't stand these slogans because they sound so good on the outside, but then you dig into those and disinformation really means we're going to censor half of the country. And Black Lives Matter really means we're going to take away the nuclear family. And keeping people safe is we're going to force vaccinate the whole country. And so, we're not really keeping people safe because we're not protecting the border. We're not supporting our police officers who actually want to keep people safe. And, protecting this whole information, problem, the censorship is making it where we really can't know truth. And so how are you supposed to unify a country with people who feel like they can't have their voice heard and when their First Amendment rights are being taken away? And so really, I like to talk a lot about truth and honesty are something that's, been core to my being since I was a little girl. And so another word that has come up is justice. And justice, again, is a biblical term. The Bible says to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And that's what I'm going to do the best I can. I think that there is a little bit of truth in a lot of these, what we call narratives that are going on in society right now. And I think there is a lack of justice in a lot of ways. And we talk about abortion. Abortion is a complete lack of justice. And so as a Republican, I'm always going to fight for that baby down to conception, but I also want to, advocate for that mother and advocate for adoption to be easier for families who want to adopt. And so there's a lot of these items, and specifically in education, I think that that's a that's an area that's huge right now. Almost one of the most critical things that we should be talking about is there really is porn in schools. I've been working with the Moms for Liberty group and looking at these books that they're finding in schools, and it's just disgusting. And no child should be looking at this stuff. They're being given surveys that ask them, in middle school, how often do you have sex? Do you identify as a male, female, transgender, bisexual, whatever word that they come up with these days. And so they're implanting these ideas in our children's mind, and the parents have no say so in this. And then they're telling white children to hate their whiteness and they're the oppressor, and they're telling children of color that the system is against them and they're oppressed, instead of pushing them to academic excellence. Right. And so I really want to create, parents' choice. And so if I were elected, the thing that I would probably, almost one of the number ones that I want to be able to push for, which will be challenging, but I think it could be even a nonpartisan issue because the Democrats say they love education, is giving that power back to the parents. And so any money, if it were up to me, coming from the federal government, I would want to have it be in a voucher system that's going directly to the parents and just bypassing the state. And that parent can take the voucher and take it to a homeschool program. They can take it to public school, private school, charter school, wherever they want their child to be educated, and create more of a free market in education. And so then these teachers and school boards are going to actually have to listen to the parents. And I would even take it a step further and say that I wouldn't give any federal money to any state that doesn't also match that voucher system for these parents, so that it is a pure, I would say, capitalist society in education. And then that will really eradicate a lot of this indoctrination that's happening in schools, and really the lack of education standards that we have. These kids are so far behind, especially with COVID, and we have to do something to change that. And so really, I can go into justice forever, but those are a lot of the things that I like to talk about. And so I really want to make sure that we preserve our freedom. And I think if we really want unity in our country, we always have to start with truth, and you can't have justice without truth. So starting with that truth and justice, and hopefully we'll see unity in our country.
Well, let me ask you this, Courtney. I went through your website just kind of preparing for the interview. And by the way, excellent website, probably one of the better ones out there. Matter of fact, I was taking notes. I'm thinking, well, we, Next Door Radio, we could take a lesson from that website. It's awesome. So, just going through your different issues on there, one of the things that jumped out to me was mental health. You do talk a little bit about mental health in there. Can you just kind of expand on what it is that you're looking at on the mental health side, and what is it you'd like to get across to the listeners that would be probably pretty important for a congressperson to be involved in?
Yeah, it's a huge problem that we have in our country. It's a buzzword for a lot of people, and it's interesting to people that are making these regulations from above. Again, we talk about this big government. We have people that are lawyers making decisions for hospitals and really decisions for mental health facilities. And I think as a nurse going in and really understanding really the crisis that we're in as an emergency room nurse, I see patients brought in a lot of times by police officers because they have to be cleared, even if they committed a crime or if they were just trying to hurt themselves or anything really, that even a schizophrenic, there's so many different things that could be related to mental health, drug overdose, those kind of things. So they have to be brought into the emergency room, and a physician has to clear them medically for them to be treated just as a psychiatric type patient. And so what'll happen is a lot of these patients are there just for a mental health complaint. And so once they're cleared medically, ideally you want to send them to a mental health facility, not the hospital. And that's really the best, in theory, the best place for them. As a Christian, I wish the church would really step in and help with a lot of this. But as far as just medically and looking at the healthcare setting for mental health patients, a lot of them get stuck in the emergency room. And so that is the last place that they really need to be. It's chaotic. They don't get good care. They might sit there for a few days. It depends on if it's a pediatric patient. Sometimes they're there for weeks or months trying to find what we call placement, which is at a facility that's ready to take those type of patients full time. And that may be long term, it might be short term, but either way, what I've found is a lot of these facilities that are present, those facilities are getting shut down due to regulations, because a lot of times these regulations that are put on these mental health facilities to keep them safe really are very expensive. And most of these patients do not have insurance. So I think that this is one of those safety issues. When we talk about military, that's something about keeping Americans safe. And I think the mental health of America, it's like really in the best interest of the patient and people around them to have good mental health care for all. And so I think that that's something that our federal government should look into helping subsidize, because most of these patients do not have insurance, like I said. And so it's really challenging to even have enough facilities to accommodate the need. And so I think that that's just something I'm really aware of. And I think it's a really complicated issue because it's almost an infinite number of people that need to be helped. But there is an acute level of people that we could actually solve some problems if there was a little bit more money, a little bit more facilities to facilitate that solution.
Ms. Courtney, we like to finish these kind of conversations in Decisions 2022 to really open up the floor, give you an opportunity to speak something that's on your mind or anything that we haven't discussed today. But the last couple minutes are wide open. Feel free to speak away. Okay.
Well, thank you. I think just my ultimate, a lot of times I talk to people, I use the word worldview a lot because I think that's where most people get in disagreements about, because we can argue on a lot of these political topics, but if your worldview is not centered in one specific spot, and for me, it's the Bible, then you're going to be skewed. You're going to be driven like the wind. There's a lot of Bible verses that talk about, you're going to change your mind a lot. And that's not something I'm going to do. If something changes my mind, it's because somebody brought a Bible verse to my attention and said I'm not really following it properly. So that's something I really like people to know about me. And something that I really think that is going wrong in our country is that the culture is changing the church rather than the church is changing the culture. And I'm very supportive of the Constitution. It's very clear that we need a separation of church and state, but the way that that's actually worded is that Congress shall make no establishment of religion. So I'm not insinuating I want to establish a religion, but I think it's really important that we continue to bring Christian morals into government, because I believe that is where truth is based. And that is where we really do have, a due north when it comes to morality, because right now what we're seeing is people are just all over the place and things completely change. We're seeing things about really anti-feminist things. 1 minute the far left was very, very feminist, and now they're saying that, men can, do women's sports, and our new Supreme Court justice is saying there is no definition to women. It doesn't really make sense, because 5 minutes ago we were fighting for women's rights, and now we can't even define what a woman is. So for people to really know who I am, they just really need to look at the fact that I'm a Christian and I really do stand on those values. And so I really appreciate your time, and anyone who wants to follow me, like you said, they can find me on my website, Courtney Geels. I'm about to tell you my email. It's very similar. CourtneyGeelsForCongress.com, and I'm on Twitter, Getter, and Instagram at Courtney Geels, and Facebook is Courtney Geels for Congress.
Fantastic.
Well, Trey, I think if our listeners have heard something they like out of Miss Courtney today, maybe they can share this on our YouTube channel. Next Door Radio has a YouTube channel. We, of course, have our local talk every day at 10 a.m. If you hear something, you want to tell your neighbor about it, kind of help share I call it the good news, different words for it, but I call it the good news of what Miss Courtney stands for. And we ask that people get out and exercise their right to vote. We're serious about it here at Next Door Radio. We talk a lot about Decision 2022. Back in 2020, we kind of got into the political side of it and started doing interviews and that kind of thing. This year is just, every week we have another interview of a candidate. People are just, it's different this year. And I think a lot of it is our society, as you were saying, is we've got some issues going on in the country politically, and we kind of need to sort them out. And I think the way to do that is to exercise your right to vote. So we appreciate your time today on Decision 2022. We ask that you share on your local or on your media as well, put out the interview, and then we can kind of take it there. If we can ever be of service to you in the future, please don't hesitate to get back in touch with us as well.
Well, thank you. And yes, the primary is May 17th. So I definitely encourage everyone to go vote and vote Courtney Geels.
Perfect. Miss Courtney, thank you so much. God bless you. And we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
This is Local Talk and Decision 2022 here on Next Door Radio, nextdoorradio.com, and by the way, Next Door Radio app.